Assessing the strategic landscape, how China's growing ties with Greenland could shift global security dynamics. Introduction. The Arctic region is witnessing a paradigm shift in geopolitical dynamics primarily fueled by climate change and the accompanying opportunities for resource extraction and new shipping routes. Among the countries vying for influence in this strategic area, China has emerged as a significant player, particularly through its growing ties with Greenland. This report delves into the intricacies of these relationships and their implications for global security, focusing on the interplay between China, the United States, and Russia. China's Arctic ambitions. China's interest in the Arctic is encapsulated in its 2018 Arctic strategy, which identifies the nation as a near-Arctic state. The strategy outlines China's intent to enhance its involvement in Arctic affairs through economic investments and infrastructure development. Greenland. With its rich deposits of natural resources such as rare earth elements, iron and uranium, is strategically important for China's technological and energy sectors. The country's efforts to establish itself as a polar power are part of a broader ambition to secure crucial resources in shipping routes as climate change continues to alter the Arctic landscape. U.S. strategic reassessment. The United States has responded to the shifting dynamics in the Arctic with a reassessment of its own strategies. The 2022 National Strategy for the Arctic emphasizes military readiness and sustainable development, acknowledging the urgent need to counteract the increasing militarization of the Arctic by Russia and the expanding influence of China. The U.S. aims to bolster its military presence and strengthen alliances with Arctic nations to safeguard its interests. Recognizing the region as vital for power projection. Military and economic competition. The Arctic is becoming a theater of military competition, with Russia significantly enhancing its military infrastructure. Concurrently, China is pursuing scientific and commercial ventures to assert its influence. Both nations are competing for control over emerging shipping routes and resource extraction opportunities that are becoming accessible due to climate change. The North Sea route and Northwest Passage could transform global trade dynamics, presenting challenges to U.S. economic interests. Key projects in Greenland. Two major projects in Greenland, a focus of Chinese investment, are the Isua iron ore project and the Kvanefjeld rare earth element project. The Isua project, initially owned by a UK company, is now under Chinese ownership and has raised concerns regarding environmental impacts and local labor dynamics. The Kvanefjeld project, known for its substantial rare earth deposits, faces opposition from environmental groups due to potential contamination risks. Both projects highlight the intersection of economic opportunity and environmental concerns, reflecting the complexities inherent in resource extraction in Greenland. Timeline of events. 1. 2009, U.S. Geological Survey estimates significant undiscovered oil and gas in the Arctic. 2. 2013, U.S. National Strategy for the Arctic region emphasizes energy and security. 3. 2018, China publishes its Arctic strategy emphasizing cooperation with Arctic states. 4. 2022, U.S. updates its Arctic strategy prioritizing military readiness and sustainable development. 5. 2023, China expands investments in Russian Arctic projects amidst geopolitical tensions. Differences in perspectives. The U.S. views China's presence in the Arctic as a potential security threat, particularly due to the dual-use nature of scientific research. In contrast, China emphasizes economic cooperation and resource acquisition as part of its Arctic engagement. This disparity in perspectives reflects broader geopolitical tensions and the competitive nature of great power relations in the Arctic. Conclusion. As China deepens its engagement with Greenland, the U.S. must navigate a complex landscape shaped by military readiness, economic competition, and environmental sustainability. The evolving dynamics in the Arctic signify a shift from cooperative to competitive postures among great powers, with profound implications for global security and resource management. The interplay between China's strategic ambitions, U.S. military readiness, and the environmental stakes involved will define the future of Arctic governance and global geopolitics in the years to come. In the evolving strategic landscape of the Arctic, China's growing ties with Greenland are reshaping global security dynamics in unexpected ways. While conventional wisdom might suggest that increased Chinese investment in Greenland would primarily serve economic interests, a deeper look reveals a complex interplay of geopolitical motivations, military considerations, and environmental challenges that could alter global security paradigms. 1. China as a near-Arctic state. China's official stance positioning itself as a near-Arctic state is often met with skepticism in Western discourse. However, this self-identification is not merely a rhetorical strategy, it is a calculated move to gain legitimacy and influence in Arctic governance. This perspective is counterintuitive because it challenges the traditional narrative that only Arctic nations should have a say in Arctic affairs. By emphasizing its geographic proximity and the shared challenges posed by climate change, China aims to assert its rights to participate in Arctic resource development and governance. Complicating the binary understanding of Arctic politics. 2. U.S. strategic reassessment. The United States' pivot to a more militarized Arctic strategy is provoked by perceived threats from both Russia and China. However, this response may inadvertently escalate tensions in the region. The U.S. sees China's presence in Greenland not just as economic competition but as a potential security threat. This reaction could lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy where military posturing from the U.S. prompts China to further entrench its position, thereby increasing the likelihood of conflict rather than cooperation. 3. Environmental considerations. The environmental impact of mining projects in Greenland, such as the Isua iron ore and Kvanefjeld rare earth projects, is often viewed through a lens of immediate economic benefit. Yet the long-term ecological consequences could undermine local livelihoods and exacerbate tensions. The counterintuitive aspect here lies in the fact that, while China may be investing in these projects to secure critical resources, the environmental degradation they cause could mobilize local and international opposition, potentially thwarting China's strategic goals. For militarization and dual-use research, China's dual-use strategy, where civilian research can serve military purposes, is often downplayed in discussions about its Arctic ambitions. The establishment of research stations and investment in scientific endeavors in Greenland can be interpreted as benign, however they also harbor potential military applications. This duality poses a significant challenge to U.S. and NATO interests as it complicates the narrative of China as merely a cooperative partner in scientific research and positions it as a strategic competitor in a militarized Arctic. 5. Sino-Russian cooperation. The increasing collaboration between China and Russia, particularly in the Arctic, challenges the traditional U.S.-led order. The partnership is often framed as a response to Western sanctions and geopolitical pressures, yet it reveals a counterintuitive dynamic. As China deepens its ties with Russia, it could inadvertently strengthen Russia's position in the Arctic, which could further alienate Western nations. This shift may lead to a more polarized Arctic where cooperation among Arctic states becomes increasingly difficult. 6. Local dynamics in Greenland. Greenland's local population has complex views on Chinese investment. While there is a desire for economic diversification beyond the fishing industry, concerns about labor practices, environmental impacts, and the potential loss of traditional livelihoods complicate the narrative of development. This local resistance can be counterintuitive for external observers who might assume that economic investment is uniformly welcomed. Instead, it highlights the nuanced challenges that come with foreign investment in resource-rich regions. 7. Global trade routes. The opening of new shipping routes due to climate change presents both opportunities and challenges. While these routes could enhance global trade efficiency, they also risk increasing geopolitical competition. The North Sea route and Northwest Passage could become battlegrounds for power projection, where control over these vital trade lanes will be contested. This development contradicts the expectation that global trade routes would lead to increased cooperation. Instead, they may exacerbate tensions among major powers. 8. Energy security and environmental policy. The U.S. Arctic strategy emphasizes both energy security and environmental protection, yet these goals often conflict. The push for Arctic resource extraction to enhance energy independence may lead to policies that neglect environmental sustainability, creating an inconsistency in U.S. strategy. This contradiction could open the door for China to position itself as a more responsible actor in the Arctic, potentially leveraging its investments to promote a narrative of sustainable development that contrasts with U.S. practices. 9. Geopolitical implications of climate change. While climate change is often framed as a global challenge requiring cooperation, it simultaneously acts as a catalyst for geopolitical competition. The melting Arctic ice enables greater access to resources and shipping routes, but it also magnifies existing tensions among Arctic and non-Arctic states. The counterintuitive realization here is that climate change, which could foster collaborative efforts to address shared challenges, may instead deepen divisions as states scramble for control over newly accessible areas. In conclusion, China's growing ties with Greenland are not simply a matter of economic interest but are deeply intertwined with global security dynamics. The interplay of military strategy, environmental considerations, and local sentiments complicates the understanding of Arctic geopolitics. As these dynamics evolve, it is imperative for stakeholders to recognize the counterintuitive aspects of this situation, as they may dictate the future of international relations in the Arctic region. The report on China's growing ties with Greenland and its implications for global security dynamics touches on several critical points that many may overlook, yet they have significant ramifications for the geopolitical landscape. Here are some of those overlooked aspects and their significance. 1. China's near-Arctic state status. Many may dismiss China's self-designation as a near-Arctic state as a mere rhetorical flourish. However, this status is central to its strategic ambitions in the Arctic and reflects its intention to participate actively in Arctic governance. By positioning itself as a near-Arctic state, China seeks to assert its rights to access and utilize resources in the Arctic region, challenging the traditional dominance of Arctic nations like the US, Canada, and Russia. This framing allows China to justify its investments and research activities in Greenland and other Arctic areas, complicating the geopolitical narrative surrounding Arctic sovereignty and resource management. 2. Environmental concerns and local impact. The report highlights significant environmental concerns related to China's mining projects in Greenland, particularly the Isua iron ore and Kvanefjeld rare earth element projects. While the focus often remains on geopolitical competition, the social and environmental implications for local communities are pivotal. The extraction processes involved in these projects could threaten local ecosystems and traditional livelihoods, such as fishing and hunting, which are vital for the Greenlandic population. The potential for environmental degradation raises questions about the sustainability of such investments and the ethical implications of foreign exploitation of natural resources in vulnerable regions. 3. Militarized civil fusion strategy. An often overlooked aspect of China's Arctic ambitions is the dual-use nature of its scientific endeavors in the region. The report reveals that China's Arctic research is not solely for scientific advancement but also serves military objectives, particularly through military civil fusion strategies. This approach allows China to leverage ostensibly benign research activities to enhance its military capabilities and presence in the Arctic, which could lead to increased tensions with other Arctic nations concerned about national security and territorial integrity. 4. The dynamics of Sino-Russian collaboration. The evolving partnership between China and Russia in the Arctic is significant yet frequently underestimated. As Russia faces increasing isolation due to geopolitical tensions, particularly after its invasion of Ukraine, it has become more reliant on Chinese investments and collaboration. This shift could result in a stronger Sino-Russian bloc in the Arctic, posing challenges to U.S. interests and complicating the strategic calculus for other Arctic nations. The potential for a united front between these two powers could reshape the Arctic governance landscape, sidelining traditional Arctic states. 5. Implications for U.S. Arctic strategy. The report outlines how the U.S. has reassessed its Arctic strategy in response to growing Chinese and Russian activities. However, the nuanced differences in the U.S. and China's approaches, military readiness versus economic cooperation, highlight a fundamental strategic divergence. The U.S. must navigate this complex landscape by balancing its military interests with the need for sustainable development and environmental protection. Overlooking the implications of China's economic engagements and how they might influence U.S. policy could lead to miscalculations in addressing security concerns in the region. 6. Local governance and autonomy. The report touches on the local governance issues in Greenland regarding foreign investments and the rights of the indigenous population. The complexities around the Storskalalov or large-scale projects act and the local opposition to foreign labor highlight the tensions between economic development and local autonomy. The significance of engaging local communities in decision-making processes is often underestimated in discussions about international investments and resource extraction. Ignoring these dynamics could lead to social unrest and undermine the legitimacy of foreign involvement in Greenland. 7. Shifting trade routes and economic dependencies. The potential for climate change to open new shipping routes in the Arctic, such as the North Sea route and Northwest Passage, is a critical factor that is sometimes overshadowed by military considerations. These routes could significantly alter global trade patterns, enabling countries like China to enhance their economic influence in the region. The U.S. needs to recognize that its strategic interests are intertwined with economic dependencies that could emerge as these routes become more navigable. Ignoring the economic dimensions of Arctic geopolitics may lead to a lack of preparedness for potential shifts in global commerce. 8. Long-term resource management. The report emphasizes the significance of rare earth elements and other resources in Greenland, which are crucial for global supply chains, especially in technology and renewable energy sectors. Many may overlook the long-term implications of resource management in the Arctic, particularly as countries face increasing pressure to transition to greener technologies. The race for resources in the Arctic could lead to unsustainable practices if not managed with a focus on environmental impacts and the rights of indigenous populations. In conclusion, the strategic landscape surrounding China's ties with Greenland and its broader implications for Arctic governance and global security dynamics is multifaceted. The overlooked aspects discussed above highlight the necessity for thorough understanding and engagement with the complexities of geopolitical interests, environmental sustainability, local governance, and economic dependencies. As the Arctic continues to evolve into a contested space, it is crucial for policymakers to consider these dimensions in their strategic planning to ensure a balanced approach to security development and environmental stewardship. 1. China's Arctic ambitions and strategic interests in Greenland. China's Arctic strategy, articulated in its 2018 White Paper, portrays the nation as a near-Arctic state with an ambition to increase its economic and infrastructural presence in the Arctic region, particularly in Greenland. This strategy is driven by China's need for natural resources, especially rare earth elements, iron and uranium, which are essential for its technological and energy sectors. The strategic importance of Greenland lies not only in its rich deposits but also in its geographical position, which could facilitate the Polar Silk Road and enhance China's influence in Arctic governance. China's approach is characterized by a win-win strategy aiming to foster bilateral relationships with Arctic states while seeking economic development opportunities. This includes significant investments in Greenland's mining projects such as the Isua iron ore project and the Kvanefjeld rare earth element project. However, these initiatives face local opposition due to potential environmental impacts and concerns over labor dynamics, raising questions about the balance between economic benefits and ecological sustainability. 2. U.S. strategic reassessment and response to Chinese expansion. In light of China's growing presence in the Arctic, the United States has undergone a significant strategic reassessment of its Arctic policy. The 2022 National Strategy for the Arctic emphasizes security, international governance, and sustainable development, underscoring the urgency of addressing threats posed by both Russia and China. The U.S. aims to bolster its military capabilities and presence in the Arctic, recognizing the region as a critical arena for power projection. The U.S. faces challenges in matching the military infrastructure that Russia has established, including the modernization of Arctic military bases and increased naval capabilities. This disparity creates a security dilemma as Russia interprets U.S. military activities as aggressive intrusions. The U.S. must navigate this landscape carefully, balancing military readiness with diplomatic efforts to mitigate tensions and foster cooperation with Arctic allies. 3. Military and economic competition in the Arctic. The Arctic is witnessing a rise in militarization driven by the competing ambitions of China and Russia against the backdrop of climate change and the opening of new shipping routes. Both nations are vying for control over emerging opportunities for resource extraction and trade routes made accessible due to melting ice. The North Sea route and Northwest Passage are becoming increasingly viable, altering traditional global trade dynamics. This competition is not only military but also economic, as both China and Russia seek to leverage their geographic advantages and resource wealth. For China, the Arctic represents a frontier for expanding its economic influence, while for Russia, it is a means to reassert its status as a global power. The U.S. must reassess its economic strategies to counter these developments, particularly as allies in Europe and Asia navigate their relationships with Russia amidst the ongoing geopolitical tensions. 4. Key projects in Greenland and environmental concerns. The Isua and Kvanefjeld mining projects exemplify the complexities surrounding China's involvement in Greenland. The Isua project transitioning to Chinese ownership raises concerns about environmental degradation and the potential impact on local livelihoods, particularly in fishing and traditional practices. Similarly, the Kvanefjeld project, which involves the extraction of rare earth elements, faces opposition due to its potential environmental risks and historical nuclear contamination fears. These projects highlight the intersection of economic ambitions, environmental sustainability, and local community rights, illustrating the challenges faced by Greenland as it seeks to diversify its economy while maintaining its cultural and environmental integrity. The ongoing debates around these projects underscore the need for careful consideration of the socio-economic impacts of foreign investments in the region, particularly as Greenland navigates its relationship with powerful external actors like China. Conclusion. As China strengthens its ties with Greenland, the implications for global security dynamics are profound. The U.S. must adapt its strategies to address the growing influence of China and Russia in the Arctic while balancing military readiness, economic interests, and environmental sustainability. The evolving landscape in the Arctic signals a shift from cooperation to competition among great powers, necessitating a nuanced approach to governance, resource management, and international relations. 1. The Cold War and the Arctic region. During the Cold War, the Arctic became a pivotal theater of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. The strategic significance of the region was underscored by the establishment of military bases and surveillance operations by both superpowers. The U.S. built radar stations and naval facilities in Greenland, particularly the Thule Air Base, which served as a critical location for monitoring Soviet missile launches and maintaining air defense capabilities. Similarly, the Soviet Union expanded its presence in the Arctic to assert control over shipping routes and resources. This historical context of militarization and rivalry in the Arctic parallels contemporary concerns surrounding China's growing influence in Greenland and the broader Arctic region. 2. China's investment in Africa. In the early 21st century, China's economic engagement in Africa became a focal point of international relations, drawing parallels to its current interests in the Arctic. China's investments in African nations often involved resource extraction, infrastructure development, and the establishment of strategic partnerships. This has led to concerns from Western nations regarding China's intentions, influence, and the potential for a neo-colonial approach. Similar to its dealings in Greenland, China's strategy in Africa has been characterized by the pursuit of mutually beneficial agreements, which, however, have raised alarms about economic dependency and political leverage over local governments. 3. The Panama Canal Treaty negotiations. The negotiations surrounding the transfer of control of the Panama Canal from the United States to Panama in the late 20th century exemplify the complexities of international relations involving strategic assets. The U.S. maintained a significant military and economic presence in Panama for decades, viewing the canal as essential for its maritime interests. As Panamanian nationalism grew, negotiations led to the Torrijos-Carter treaties, which aimed to return control of the canal to Panama by the end of the 20th century. This shift in control raised concerns regarding the security implications for U.S. interests in the region, resonating with contemporary anxieties regarding China's investments and influence in strategically significant areas like Greenland. Future outlook: predictions for the future of China's ties with Greenland and global security dynamics. As we move towards 2030 and beyond, the strategic landscape surrounding China's growing ties with Greenland is set to have profound implications for global security dynamics, particularly in the Arctic region. The interplay between China, the United States, Russia, and Arctic nations will shape geopolitical relations, economic opportunities, and environmental challenges. Here are several key predictions. 1. Increased Chinese influence in Greenland. China will likely deepen its investments in Greenland, focusing on major mining projects such as Kvanefjeld and Isua. This will not only enhance China's access to critical natural resources including rare earth elements and uranium, but also solidify its presence as a key player in Arctic governance. Environmental concerns and local opposition may slow progress, but the urgency for economic diversification in Greenland will push both the local government and China to navigate these challenges collaboratively. 2. U.S. and NATO response. In reaction to China's expanding influence, the United States and NATO are expected to bolster military presence and infrastructure in Greenland and the broader Arctic region. Enhanced surveillance capabilities, increased icebreaker fleets, and collaborative defense strategies with Arctic allies will be prioritized to counter perceived threats from both China and Russia. This military buildup may escalate tensions but will be framed as necessary for national security and environmental protection. 3. Geopolitical competition intensifies. The Arctic is likely to become a focal point of geopolitical competition, with China, the US, and Russia vying for control over emerging shipping routes and resource extraction opportunities. The melting ice will open new pathways such as the North Sea route and Northwest Passage, altering global trade dynamics and creating a race for infrastructure development. This competition will be exacerbated by differing national strategies, with China framing its ambitions within a cooperative win-win narrative, while the US and its allies adopt a more defensive posture. 4. Environmental and indigenous rights concerns. The environmental implications of increased mining and resource extraction will become a significant point of contention. Local communities and environmental groups in Greenland are likely to intensify their advocacy for sustainable practices and protection of traditional livelihoods. International scrutiny over the environmental impacts of Chinese mining operations will grow, potentially leading to stricter regulations and demands for corporate accountability. The intersection of economic development and indigenous rights will be a critical issue that shapes future negotiations. 5. Russia-China cooperation in the Arctic. The partnership between Russia and China will deepen, particularly in the context of mutual interests in the Arctic. As Russia faces isolation due to Western sanctions, it will increasingly rely on Chinese investments and technology to develop Arctic infrastructure and resources. This Sino-Russian alliance could lead to a more coordinated approach to Arctic governance, complicating the strategic calculations of the US and its allies. 6. International governance challenges. The evolving Arctic landscape will challenge existing governance frameworks such as the Arctic Council. As China seeks a more prominent role in Arctic affairs, tensions with the US and other Arctic states may lead to a re-evaluation of the current governance structures. A push for inclusive governance that accommodates the interests of non-Arctic states like China could emerge, but this will face opposition from countries wary of China's intentions and its potential militarization of scientific research. 7. Technological and scientific advancements. China's investment in polar research and technology will continue to grow, enhancing its capabilities in the Arctic. The dual-use nature of these technologies will raise concerns among Western nations about potential military applications. As China establishes more research stations and engages in scientific exploration, the US and its allies will need to closely monitor these developments and strengthen their own research initiatives to maintain a competitive edge. 8. Climate change as a catalyst for cooperation and conflict. Climate change will remain a double-edged sword in the Arctic. While it offers new economic opportunities, it also poses significant environmental challenges that require collaborative solutions. The US may find it necessary to engage with China on shared concerns such as climate resilience and sustainable resource management. Despite the competitive dynamics, this could lead to a paradoxical relationship where cooperation on environmental issues coexists with geopolitical rivalry. 9. Emerging economic partnerships. Greenland's need for foreign investment will likely lead to increased partnerships with non-Arctic states beyond China, including European and Asian nations. This diversification of investment sources may dilute China's influence over time while creating a more complex economic landscape in the Arctic. The competition for economic partnerships will push Arctic states to balance their relationships with China and the West carefully. 10. Long-term strategic realignment. As the geopolitical landscape shifts, Arctic nations may reassess their alliances and strategies. The increasing assertiveness of China and Russia could lead to a realignment of Arctic security partnerships, prompting countries like Canada and Denmark to strengthen ties with the US and other NATO allies. This strategic realignment will be crucial in shaping the future of Arctic governance and security dynamics. In conclusion, the future of China's ties with Greenland is intricately linked to broader global security dynamics. As China seeks to assert its influence in the Arctic, the responses from the US, Russia, and other Arctic nations will create a complex interplay of cooperation and competition. Navigating these dynamics will require a careful balance of national interests, environmental stewardship, and respect for indigenous rights, ultimately shaping the future of the Arctic region in the coming decades.